Good afternoon. Welcome to our Reviewing Common 990 Series Schedules webinar. My name's Nikita, and together we're going to talk about the different 990 Series schedules and how they apply to the 990 Series forms. We're also going to discuss how Tax990 can assist you in your annual 990 Series filing. If you have questions during the presentation, please add them to the chat. Aubrey is here with me to assist in answering your questions along the way. If you're unable to view the webinar in full screen, please try clicking the square in the upper right of the webinar to enlarge the view. We do want to mention we are not tax advisors and will not be providing specific tax advice. We will purely be discussing IRS e-filing requirements and the process of e-filing. For specific tax questions, please contact a tax professional. If you are a Tax990 client and you have specific account questions, you can email those questions to our support team and we'll review your account directly, but we won't be able to answer specific account questions during the webinar. We will be recording the webinar and it will be available for review after the event. So please watch your email for a link to the recording, and we'll also have it on our website at tax990.com. During the webinar, we'll be discussing what is being reported on the 990 forms, what organization information is required when completing your annual return, IRS e-filing requirements, 990 series schedules, and then some of the more common schedules. We'll just dive a little bit deeper into those. IRS filing deadlines and filing with Tax990. The form you choose to file will depend on your organization's financial activity. Depending on how much your organization brought in and the total assets of the organization, the form type may change from year to year. When completing a 990 series return, you're providing the IRS with information about what the organization accomplished throughout the year. You'll explain the programs your organization was part of, the activities your organization hosted, and the financial transactions related to those programs and activities. You'll also provide information pertaining to governance of the organization and the annual revenue, expenses, and assets. Your 990 series return may also be used when applying for grants and funding. As mentioned, you'll be asked about your organization's revenue, expenses, and assets. The form you choose will be based on the gross receipts and the total assets at the end of your tax year. But how do you determine that information? Gross receipts are the total amounts the organization received from all sources during its annual accounting period without subtracting any costs or expenses. Total assets are the assets owned by the entity that has an economic value whose benefits can be derived in the future. To confirm what your gross receipts and total assets are, you may consider speaking with a tax professional for confirmation prior to filing. There are several important pieces of information you'll need prior to filing. You'll want to confirm the organization's 9-digit EIN, the organization's address, the tax-exempt status, the tax year beginning and ending date, and the principal officer information such as their name, phone number, and address. The information you provide on your return must match the information on the IRS database. Most of this information can be found on your organization's IRS determination letter or on previous tax returns. If you don't have this documentation, you may need to contact the IRS prior to filing. To maintain your tax-exempt status and remain compliant with the IRS, organizations are required to file a 990 series return on an annual basis. Your filing deadline is based on when your organization's tax year ends. We'll soon discuss determining your filing deadline, but keep in mind failure to file on an annual basis could result in penalties by the IRS or revocation of the organization's exempt status. If you have applied for exempt status but not yet received notice of the approval, there is an option to indicate that your application is pending. However, if you're unsure If you need to file, we would suggest contacting the IRS. The IRS mandated e-filing for 990 series returns on July 1st of 2019. Organizations filing a return with a tax year beginning date after July 1st, 2019 are required to e-file their returns moving forward. The IRS is moving towards e-filing for many reasons. E-filing reduces the amount of filing errors and helps ensure that the IRS guidelines are met, meaning calculations are more accurate and information provided matches information on the IRS database. It makes filing and IRS processing more efficient and provides a quicker turnaround time on updated form status. Okay, now we're going to dive into the different 990 series schedules. The schedules are used to provide the IRS with specific information about a topic indicated on the 990 series return. Your organization does not have to complete all of the schedules or even all of the parts of the necessary schedules. You only complete the information that pertains specifically to your organization. But we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. First, we're going to look at all the different schedule options that Tax990 provides, what they're for, and what forms they associate with. Schedule A is used to provide information on public charity status and public support. This helps the IRS know that you're following the support guidelines of your organization's exempt status. And 990 and 990 EZ filers may have to complete this form. Schedule B is to provide specific information on your organization contributors that gave more than $5,000. Schedule B qualifies for the 990, the 990 EZ, and the 990 PF forms. Schedule C is used to furnish additional information on political campaign activities or lobbying activities and may apply to the 990 or the 990 EZ form. Schedule D is used to provide the required reporting for donor-advised funds, conservation easements, certain art and museum collections, escrow or custodial accounts or arrangements, endowment funds, and supplemental financial information. Right now, Tax990 offers Schedule D for the 990 form. Schedule E is used to report various details about the school's policies and is applicable towards the 990 and the 990 EZ. Schedule F is used to provide information on activities conducted outside of the United States and applies to the 990 form. Schedule G is used to report professional fundraising services, fundraising events, and gaming, and may be applied on the 990 and the 990 EZ. Schedule H is used to provide information on the activities and policies of the community benefit provided by its hospitals, facilities, and other non-hospital health care facilities that are operated during the year. This includes facilities operated either directly or through disregarded entities or joint ventures and only applies to the 990 form at this time through Tax990. Schedule I is used to provide information on grants and other assistance made by the filing organization during the tax year to domestic organizations, domestic governments, and domestic individuals. Schedule I applies to the 990 form at this time. Schedule J is used by an organization to report compensation information for certain officers, directors, individual trustees, key employees, and highest compensated employees, and information on certain compensation practices of the organization, and it applies to the 990 form. Schedule L is used to report on financial transactions or arrangements between the organization and disqualified persons under Section 4958 or other interested persons. Schedule L is also used to determine whether a member of the organization's governing body is an independent member. Both 990 and 990 EZ filers may have to complete this schedule. Schedule M is used to report the types of non-cash contributions received during the year by the organization and certain information regarding such contributions. The schedule requires reporting of the quantity and the reported financial statement amount of non-cash contributions received by the type of property. 990 filers may have to complete Schedule M. Schedule N is used when reporting that the organization is going out of existence or disposing of more than 25% of its net assets through sale, exchange, or other disposition. 990 and 990 EZ filers can complete the Schedule N form. Schedule O is for an organization to use to provide the IRS with narrative information required for responses to specific questions. It allows organizations to supplement information reported on the 990 and the 990 EZ form. It is not used to supplement responses to questions on other schedules. Schedule R is used to provide information on related organizations, on certain transactions with related organizations, and on certain unrelated partnerships through which the organization conducts significant activities, and applies to the 990 form. We do have one question by Mark about the Schedule I and whether it is for grants made or grants received. Again, Schedule I is used to provide information on grants and other assistance made by the filing organization during the tax year. Mark, hopefully that answers your question. It's for grants made. That was a lot of information, but please keep in mind not every schedule will be required for your organization. And with Tax990, you won't have to determine which schedule is required. Based on the information you provide on your return, Tax990 will generate the necessary schedules for you. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later when we go into the application and review the schedules. But first, I want to just briefly discuss some of the most common schedules. So Schedule A for public charity status and public support. This schedule is required by any Section 501c3 organization or organization treated as such that files a Form 990 EZ or 990. The schedule reports the reason for your public charity status, public support, total support, public support percentage, and supporting organization details. You'll begin by choosing the category on page 1 of Schedule A that meets the reason for your organization's public charity status. Then you'll be prompted to complete the associated sections of the schedule. For example, if you choose that your organization has a public charity status because it receives a substantial part of its public support from a governmental unit or from a general public, which would be line 7 on page 1, you'll be prompted to complete Part 2 of Schedule A, explaining the values of that revenue received that fall into that category, and it will calculate your public support percentage. Schedule B is a very common schedule. Every organization must complete Schedule B unless it certifies that it doesn't meet the filing requirements of this schedule on the 990 series return. On Schedule B, you're reporting information on the organization type, such as the general or special rule that applies to the organization. If an organization isn't covered by the general or special rule, it may not need to complete Schedule B. So on Schedule B, you would first indicate whether you fall under this category or one of these 3 categories. If you don't fall under either, you may not need Schedule B, but you should consult with a tax professional to confirm that information. Additionally, you may not meet the filing requirements for Schedule B if your organization did not receive more than $5,000 in contributions from a single contributor. So if you received more than $5,000 in contributions, but they were all small donations and not a single donation over $5,000, you may not need Schedule B. Schedule B is specifically for contributions made by a single person over $5,000 or a single contributor over $5,000. You'll be reporting the contributor information, including the contributor's name, address, total contribution, and type of contribution. Non-cash property description, fair market value, and date received is applicable of how the gift is held. Transferee's name, address, relationship of transfer or transferee. Schedule N is for liquidation, termination, dissolution, or significant disposition of assets. An organization will file Schedule N to report going out of existence or disposing of more than 25% of its net assets through sale, exchange, or other disposition. Schedule N will require information about the details on the transactions of the liquidation, termination, or dissolution, including description of assets, date, fair market value, method of determining fair market value, EIN of the recipient, name and address of the recipient, and IRC section of recipient. Schedule O is used to report supplemental information to Form 990 or 990EZ. An organization should use Schedule O rather than separate attachments to provide the IRS with narrative information required for responses to specific questions on the 990 and 990EZ form, and to explain the organization's operations. It allows organizations to supplement information reported. However, you don't use Schedule O to supplement responses to questions in other schedules. So you can't use Schedule O to provide a narrative on information from Schedule A. You can only use Schedule O to provide narrative on information reported on the 990 form, and we'll look at that a little bit further in the application. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and have just a brief Q&A before we proceed. We'll take just a couple minutes and you can post your questions in the chat and we'll review them within the webinar. Mark, private foundations, if you're filing a 990 PF form, a private foundation doesn't qualify for Schedule A. Only Schedule B is applicable towards a 990 PF. Bill, you're going to need to speak with the IRS or a tax professional to determine which line you check on Schedule A. That would be considered direct tax advice, and we cannot tell you specifically which line your organization qualifies for. Mary is wondering if a tax preparer can use Tax990. Yes, absolutely, Mary. We have the option for a tax preparer to use our program. You would be able to add your P10 information and complete the tax preparer information and file on behalf of your client. With a tax preparer account, you'll also have the option to send what's called an 8453 TE signature form to your client so they can review and sign off on it prior to filing. Annie's wondering again about Schedule B and the requirements for that. So on Schedule B, you only report information if the contributor contributed over $5,000. If the contributor only contributed $4,500, that would not be reported on Schedule B. It has to be $5,000 or more in contribution to be reported on Schedule B. Linda, you would need to contact the IRS to determine how to merge two nonprofit organizations. That's not information that we would be able to provide guidance on. John, you can report an organization contribution on Schedule B, yes. We do have some bulk upload options for Schedule B. If you have a significant amount of contributions, we do have some bulk upload options on that. You would have to use the template that Tax990 provides and add all of your information to our template to bulk upload it. We do not have an option to pull something that you have in an alternate software or on your own spreadsheet or however you track those. But if you do have other questions about it, you can give us a call while you're working on it and we'd be happy to give you additional guidance. Again, I want to remind everybody we will be sending the presentation in an email after the webinar, so you'll have a copy of it that you can review for reference, and we'll also have it available at tax990.com. We have someone wondering if foreign contributions are included in Schedule B. There is an option on Schedule B to indicate that it is a foreign address. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on. Those were really great questions. Aubrey is still here, and she'll continue to answer your questions throughout the presentation, but we're going to go ahead and move on. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about filing deadlines. The 990 series return deadline is based on the organization's tax year. Your annual 990 series return must be filed by the 15th day of the 5th month following the end of the organization's tax year. Right now, we're really focusing on the May 15th deadline. If the 15th of the month falls on a weekend or federal holiday, the deadlines move to the next business day. Most organizations have either a calendar tax year that runs from January 1st to December 31st, or a fiscal tax year that runs from July 1st to June 30th. However, a fiscal tax year can be any 12-month time frame other than January 1st to December 31st. The May 15th deadline we're focusing on right now is for those calendar tax year organizations that run from January 1st to December 31st, and their deadline is May 15th. If you have a May 15th deadline and you are concerned about time, then you can file the 8868 extension form to apply for a 6-month deadline extension, which would push your deadline to November 15th. If you have any deadline, if you have a May 15th deadline, you can start filing that now. So we're going to talk a little bit about filing directly with Tax990. Tax990 is a market-leading IRS authorized e-file provider. We have over a decade of experience e-filing tax forms. When you file with Tax990, we have very dedicated live customer support. We have competitive pricing and options to file for previous tax years. And since the IRS has mandated e-filing, Tax990 is a great solution for electronically filing your annual 990 series returns. We're going to just go over a couple of the key features with Tax990, and we'll talk a little bit more about these when we go into the application together. We understand it's not always easy to know what additional information is required on your return. When you complete a return with Tax990, we help determine what schedules are required based on the information you provide on your form. The schedules required will automatically generate for you to complete, and additionally, only the necessary parts, as I mentioned, of the schedules will appear, so you're not completing information that's not required. Tax990 performs an internal audit after you've completed the return. This verifies that the requirements from the IRS form instructions have been met. The audit helps verify that your calculations are accurate and the necessary schedules are generated. We provide the auto calculations, and this feature helps remove the guesswork from filing by calculating several areas of the return. For example, when you input all your different categories of revenue, the total revenue will be calculated accordingly. When filing from year to year, a lot of your information remains the same. So with Tax990, we provide the ability to transfer information directly from a prior year. When filing consecutive years, the organization information, public charity status, books are in the care of details, Schedule B contributor names and addresses, list of officers, and prior year revenue and expenses can all be transferred to the current year return. This is an optional feature, and the information can be changed once the transfer is made, which leaves it really customizable. In the case that your return is rejected by the IRS, Tax990 provides the reason for the IRS rejection and allows you to resolve and retransmit the return at no additional cost. For example, if the IRS rejected your return because the tax period provided does not match what the IRS has in their database, you'll be able to edit the information on the return and retransmit it. It's important to know if your return was accepted, so once the IRS provides a status update, you'll receive an email with an acceptance notice, and the IRS acceptance letter will be available in your account for your records. We're going to go ahead and go into the Tax990 application and review some of the features that we've talked about. Just one moment while I'm pulling up the account. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the filing process with Tax990 and work through transmitting a return. We're going to focus on just completing a 990 EZ. We're going to take a look at Schedules A, B, and O. We'll review the internal audit, the option that we have to share a return, and transmitting to the IRS. So once we've logged into the account, you can see here we've got our main organization up. You can add multiple organizations to the same account. So if you are a member of multiple organizations and you're assisting in filing, you can add all of those and manage it from one place. If you are a tax preparer and you have several clients for different organizations, you can add all of your organizations to one account and manage all of your organizations from one place. So you can see here I have several organizations in this account. Everything that you add as organizations saves. So when you come in each year to file another return, your prior year information is automatically there and shows up. So if you don't remember what you filed last year, you can look at your account and see that last year you filed our form-based filing format for the 990 EZ. Everything saves automatically in the account, so it's a little bit easier from year to year. Today we're going to look at this 990 EZ I have here in progress. As you can see, I have other forms, our interview-based filing format or a form-based filing format. With the interview-based filing, it's a very question and answer format. It's, did your organization do this? Yes or no? And then it'll prompt you to complete the associated information. Whereas our form-based looks more like the PDF of the form and you fill it out line by line. And we can review that in a few minutes. Right now, we're just going to go ahead and click continue filing here. There. So when we begin our form here, we're just gonna, like I said, you fill it out line by line. So all of this top information about the organization will automatically populate year after year. The yellow boxes you see here allow you to input information, and the gray boxes are auto calculations. So this number here is calculated from part 2 of the form. It's not a value that we can put in there ourselves. It's something that will automatically generate based on information we provide. The yellow boxes allow us to put in our individual values. And anywhere that you see this green plus sign, you can use the green plus sign to input your values, and your explanation that you provide will generate on Schedule O. So as I mentioned, Schedule O is used to give additional narrative to specific lines of the form. For example, the other revenue section, it says here describing Schedule O. When you click that green plus sign, the explanation you provide on where the other revenue came from would generate on Schedule O. The amount you provide would generate here on the form for line 8. We can navigate through the form using this navigation bar over here. This top icon allows us to go page by page through the return. And as we scroll through, we can see all 4 pages of the 990 EZ form. As we scroll down, we can see the schedules that have been generated for our return. So because we've selected here on page 1 that we are a 501c3, Schedule A generated. If we uncheck 501c3, Schedule A goes away. If we click on Schedule A, only page 1 and page 2 of the schedule are opened up because that's all that we're required to complete at this time. On page 1, we selected line 7, which generated part 2 of that schedule, saying because you made this selection, you have to complete this portion of the schedule. So as mentioned, we've reported our information from that support, and it's generated our public support percentage based off the information we've provided. Now, we get a lot of questions from clients that say, I've always completed part 3 of Schedule A in the past. Why is that not happening? So we also explain that information. So for example, Schedule A Part 3, if you click here, we don't have to complete it at this time. The system is saying you don't meet the requirements to complete this portion of the schedule, but why not? So if you click on conditions, it's going to tell us that this Schedule A Part 3 will be enabled when we check line 10 of Schedule A Part 1. So because we checked line 7, Part 2 was generated. Had we checked line 10, Part 3 would be generated. And it's that same process throughout all of the schedules on the form. So as I scroll down, you'll see Schedule C is not required. Why not? It's going to explain to us what we would need to do in order to generate Schedule C. Down at the bottom, as mentioned, is our Schedule O information. Now, you cannot add information directly to Schedule O. Everything you add to Schedule O has to be done through the 990 form. So I can't click on this page 1 of Schedule O and edit the information. I would have to go back to Part 1, line 16 of the 990 and edit the information I've provided on that line to change my Schedule O. And each page will indicate a specific line that you provided a narrative on for your 990 form. Just going to scroll back up here and go over how to input again. There is an option for custom Schedule O. And if you click that, so say you want to provide more information on Part 1, contribution, gifts, grants, you would be able to add an additional explanation and customize your response there by checking the part number, inputting the line, and providing your explanation. And then that would show up on the list record so you can edit it if necessary. And the same goes, we have a custom Schedule O option, as you can see, for several different areas of the form. So if you feel necessary to provide additional information on a specific part and line of the form, you can do that with the custom Schedule O, but you do have to reference a specific line and part. You can't just put a random narrative that doesn't attach to a specific part and line of the form. Let's look briefly at Schedule B as well, since we talked about that, and then we'll move on to the internal audit option. So Schedule B generated. As I mentioned, you do have the option not to complete Schedule B. I'm just going to quickly go back to page 1 of the 990 EZ form. Had I checked this box here, 990 EZ page 1, check if the organization is not required to attach Schedule B. Had I checked that box, our Schedule B would not generate. The 990 and the 990 PF both have a similar box option. It's not always going to be here in column H for the other forms, but the option is available. So if you do not need to complete Schedule B for any reason, you can check that box. We're going to go ahead and uncheck it and go back to Schedule B. We've indicated we're a 501c3 and we fall under the general rule. So page 2 is enabled for us to complete. As I mentioned, you have the option to indicate that it is a foreign address and that the contribution came from a foreign address by checking this box. Otherwise, you just need to put in the contributor information, type of contribution, and the total amount of contribution made. As mentioned, we do have the internal audit, which is going to indicate if you've not completed something appropriately. So for example, this little red exclamation point here, if we click on that, it's going to tell us we have an error here because we haven't entered a contribution amount more than $5,000. So if we put in $4,500, that error will not go away because it has to be over $5,000. Now that we've entered an amount over $5,000, the error is gone. If we look at some of the other icon options over here, the second one is going to be our internal audit. So when we click on this audit error icon here, it's going to show us all of the errors that we have on the form. When we click fix error, it will take us to the page in reference for that error. So this one is saying in part 4, so if we scroll down, we clicked fix error, it took us to this page. We go down to part 4, stating that if we have information on any of these columns or these lines, the associated columns have to be completed. So because we have this board member listed here, we have to complete all associated columns. Whether the amount is 0, great, we can input 0. If there's an actual dollar amount or value, you can list that value. But if you have something on that line, you have to complete the associated lines. We'll refresh that error and it'll go away. Now we have one more on Schedule B. If we click fix error, it's going to take us to Schedule B. And again, is stating because we've provided information on one of the rows, the associated columns all have to be completed. So we did not check a type of contribution on this top contributor. Once we refresh that, it'll say no more errors. So we've cleared all of the errors and met the requirements of the organization and the IRS guidelines. The third icon is going to be form instructions and schedule instructions. So while you're working on the form, if you have to reference the IRS instructions, you can do so within the application. The fourth icon is just basic information on what the different icons mean throughout the form. So if you see, like we saw the red exclamation point, that's indicating we have an error. The green plus sign allows you to add information, so on and so forth. So it's just a navigation tool. And then we have some different settings here to allow you to adjust the way the form is being displayed. Moving on, you can look at your previous return if you filed multiple years with us. You can download a PDF copy of your form. And when you've completed the entire form and you're ready to proceed, you can save and continue to audit. You'll be able to review a detailed summary of the information, which would include the schedules attached to your form, and then the basic 990 easy information, the tax year, the tax exempt status provided, so on and so forth. And you'll continue to audit. There are no errors found because we already resolved those using the error icon, and we'll click next. This is just the service fees page explaining how much the filing fee is. If you want a text or fax alert, you can add those to your service fees in your total. And then the next page is where you'll input your credit card information and pay for the form. This form is already paid for, so we'll move on. We allow you to share your return if you are a treasurer and need to share with the board or other members of the organization. You can do that within the application. You can share electronically, which will allow you to add a name, phone number, and email address to the individual you need to share it with. When you click share return, that individual will get an email with a link where they can view the information you've provided. They can add comments, suggestions, and they can approve the return. That does not mean that you can't transmit during this process. If you send it to somebody and you're not getting a response, you can still proceed to transmit the return. If you prefer to wait until the people you share with provide an approval, you can do that as well. You will be notified as the account holder once the shared return is approved. You'll get a notification. If you do not need to share the return, you can click share manually, which really just means that you're going to proceed to transmit. It would allow you to print a copy of the return if needed and share like a PDF, whatever the case may be. But if you don't need to share it all, you can just choose this option and proceed to the next page. From here, you're going to enter a 5-digit PIN. Now, we get a lot of questions on the signature portion of the form. So with e-filing, the IRS does not require a physical signature on the form. So there is no option to sign your document. What you're doing here with the 5-digit PIN is an electronic signature. It is a PIN that you create. It is not something we provide or the IRS provides. It's a number that you generate on your own and input into this field, acting as an electronic signature. And then you would just click transmit to the IRS. And congratulations, our return has been transmitted. Now we can view and download a receipt, or we can view and download the form that we created in a PDF format. Tax990 does provide the option to amend a return if you filed it with us. Originally, you have to wait till it's accepted by the IRS, and then you can complete an amendment, which means that the IRS accepted information you've provided, but you're indicating that it's not accurate and you need to make changes. So if you need to make changes to an originally accepted form using an amended form, you can do that through Tax990. We're going to go back to the home page here. Now, during the filing process, you can always go back to the home page and download a PDF copy of your form. It will be a draft copy and have a watermark on it. You can view that at any point during your filing process. Once you've transmitted, you can view the receipt, the instructions, and once it's accepted, you can view the IRS acceptance letter as well. I do just briefly want to look at the interview-based format with you guys because it's significantly different than the form-based. So instead of looking like the form and filling it out like the form, it'll be in a question and answer format. Did you receive contributions from fundraising events? We would answer yes or no. If we answered yes, it would prompt us to add the contributions from fundraising events. If we answered no, we would just proceed to the next portion of the form. And it's going to work like that throughout the entire form. The other piece of this is it's automatically going to generate the schedules for you. So had we selected yes, we had contribution, gifts, and grants. Let's see, more than 5,000 or more. We're going to say yes. We can add our contribution, gift, and grant, and it's automatically going to create a Schedule B for us. So we wouldn't actually see Schedule B up here in the navigation anywhere or over in the navigation bar. We wouldn't see Schedule B like we do in form-based where we can scroll through it and click on the schedules directly. It would all generate on the PDF later, but it's not here for you to review. Before I leave this application here, we'll do another short question and answer. If anybody has questions on how the application works or wants to see an additional step, we can review that. So go ahead, we'll just take a minute and we'll go ahead and put them in the chat. John is wondering if we have any integration such as QuickBooks that works with Tax990 to pull your information over. At this time, we do not have any of those integration options. You do have to input your information manually onto our database, onto our filing format, or use our bulk upload templates. We don't have any integration options right now. Mark is wondering if the interview style is available for all forms. Yes, we have the interview format for all of the forms that we offer, with the exception of the 990T. The 990T form is only available in form-based. Vin is wondering if you can jump between interview-based and form-based. You cannot go back and forth between the filing options. You can switch filing options, but you will start over with whatever information you've provided will be deleted when you switch the filing options. If you're a new client, I typically suggest trying each one. Go in and play within the site a little bit and see which one you like better, and delete your forms and go try the other format, delete that, go back, whichever you prefer. But it's a bummer for clients to get halfway through the form and then decide they want to use the other filing format and have to start completely over. So go in and play with it a little bit, put in some fake numbers and fake information just so you can get used to the filing format, and then delete it and choose which one you want to use to proceed with. Anne is wondering if a contributor is always a person. So you can choose person, payroll, or non-cash. That means the contribution can come from an individual or an organization. It can come from payroll, as in the form of like a payroll deduct. Say a business offers a payroll deduction to their employees. That means it comes directly out of their paycheck before the employee even sees it and goes directly into the contribution. So you have person, payroll, and the non-cash would be something in the form of maybe time spent or equipment, things like that, a non-cash contribution. Yes, so we had a question on whether donations are the same as contributions. Yes, essentially those would be the same thing if it falls into a category of person, payroll, or non-cash. Mary is wondering when Schedule A is not required. So if you're a 501c3, Schedule A will always be required. Otherwise, it's based on the form, your organization's tax exempt status. So we have a question on how many signers you can have. So I'm not sure if that's in reference to them sharing the return electronically. If it is, you can share the return electronically with as many members of the organization that you need to. Again, we don't have an option to sign the form if you're filing on behalf of your organization. If you're a tax preparer and you're sending the signature form to your client, you can only do one signature. Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and proceed. Let me just get back to my presentation here. One moment. As I had mentioned, we do offer customer support that's dedicated, personalized, and available. You won't need to be on hold for several hours or be put on a callback list. When you need assistance with your return, you can give us a call or reach out via chat or email. We are here to help you along the way, but please keep in mind, as the May 15th deadline approaches, our wait times may be longer, but you can get started on your form now so that if you run into anything, you have plenty of time to reach out to us and gain that assistance prior to the filing deadline. Our support team is here Monday through Friday. We are 8:30 to 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be offering a coupon discount code to everybody that attended today, and it's for 10% off your filing fee. It's valid through the end of the year. Only can be used one time per account this year, and we'll send that to you guys in an email. So thank you so much for attending. We appreciate you guys. So we'll get that email sent out to you after the webinar. And if you have questions with using the discount code, please reach out to us so that we can help you make sure that it's applied to your filing fees. We do have a really great resource with our blog and our YouTube channel. We definitely encourage our clients and even non-clients to take a look at our YouTube and our blog. We provide a lot of different videos, useful information, Q&A kind of situations, just a lot of helpful tools on both of those blog and video channels. So please check those out. If we didn't get to your questions today, I will be following up with an email over the next couple of days, before the end of the day tomorrow at least, to answer your questions more directly. We do appreciate you guys joining us today for the webinar. I do hope it was helpful. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. If there's a specific topic you guys want to know more about, I'm definitely happy to take a look at that and see if we can create a webinar based off of that, or provide some additional content just based on the information that you guys want to know more about. So shoot me an email, reach out to our support team, give us your feedback, and we're happy to look at that further. If you have questions, give us a call. Otherwise, thank you guys for joining us today. I hope the rest of your week goes very well. We're almost to the end of the week, so enjoy it, and have a great rest of your day.